question. Again, we're gonna basically make this more interactive, okay? So just try to be as interactive as possible, try to answer questions and just enjoy, right? It's just us, right? So nobody's seeing this. It's just all of us here. If you feel comfortable, just make sure that you can go ahead and start asking a question or even giving us the answers. Okay, so today's part is software development process. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, there's two things that really makes you a tester at heart. One is software development lifecycle, and the other one is STLC, which is software testing lifecycle. Software development lifecycle is the engineering process of building a software. So that means from A to Z, what you need is included. So what are the stages? Stages one, getting the requirement ready, right? Gathering the requirement. Stage two, designing. Stage three, coding. Stage four, testing, right? So all of that is listed. All of that is listed in software development process, but there are different methodology. So think about software development lifecycle is a recipe, and someone can actually take the recipe and implement it in the way that they feel is most efficient. So many companies, when they build their software, they use different methodologies. And there are a few that we're going to talk about. One is software waterfall, and the other one is agile methodology, right? So agile is more like modern. Everybody is getting adapted to agile from waterfall, and waterfall is basically very stable software development methodology. So we'll talk about it, which methodology that you should probably like, or at least which methodology is the best. They both have pros and cons on their own way, so it really depends on the project and the company, but you will probably have your personal favorite. Agile, usually the one everybody choose when it comes about their personal favorite. The name itself says agile, right? So you already get the picture. It's more collaboration, and it's all about team, right? The whole team is expendable based on what is favorable to the team, what are the growth, and what needs to be done in order to have continuous improvement. These are some of the focus in Agile, but it's also Agile have its own framework, which allows you to be very consistent in each and every single development cycle compared to waterfall. So we'll talk about those. But today's class is more on the software development process. If we were able to finish it, then we may go into software testing lifecycle. All right. So let me just move this out of the way. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So software is requirement specification document. So that's one. Design document, source code. So requirement specification document can be also known as user story. It can be also known as functional requirement documents. So this is basically a document that is written. It's a technical document that explains what should happen when a user interacts with a specific part of the application. So what is the user action, and what is the response to that user action from the software? Then we have design. Design is done based off of the requirement specification or requirement document or even user story. Use case is another document that is equivalent to requirement specification. So there are many names for requirement. So simply, if you say requirement, that includes all of those type of requirement. I'm talking about use case. I'm talking about, even design document is part of the requirement. So the design document gets created from those documents because it's clearly stating what should happen and when should happen. But design, for example, color, choosing the size, font size, style, all of that is actually a decision come from the design team, marketing team, and they collaborate with whoever they can in order to come up with that kind of documentation. So design will have more visual for QA and developers to look at. And and make sense out of the requirement as well. So sometimes you'll read and you'll say, oh, I don't really understand. Then you can actually go to the design document and say, okay, this is how it should look like. Let me see. And you're doing apple to apple comparison and now it doesn't match. So that's when you want to draw that line and say, okay, wait a minute, this is clearly an issue. It doesn't follow what the design document says. But there will be a lot of collaboration. Again, your job is not just, do things and, do a few things or follow the process and you're done. Your job is also about following up and being more like an engineer, think like an engineer, right? So you have to own it. You have to go out there and you have to have conversation to make sure that things make sense. And sometimes suggestion, guys, you are in a software development team, things are being built. Sometimes you may have a better idea than the developer, right? Or even the business. So you will come up with suggestion and you will say, hey, I really like this part of the application, but I feel like it should have been this way because another app that I'm using, for example, you're using Bank of America, but you work for Chase. So I have a Bank of America account and they did it this way. I feel like it's more efficient. You bring it up to the team and then they make a decision whether to make that kind of changes. So you can feel like you're independent. You can feel like that you are an individual and you're not just going there to following order, right? You are an engineer, so you have to feel that way as well. So test suite and test plan is our side, right? So after the source code, it goes into testing. So source code is basically taking the design and requirement and translating them into a machine readable form, which makes up the software, right? So who does that? Developers do that. Designer is basically done by UX design, a graphical designer. So you give them whatever name, but they normally call them UX designers, UX and UI designers. Okay, and then we have test suites and test plans. So test suite is basically, think about test cases in a bulk, right? It has 20, 30, 50, 100, 200, even thousands of test cases. So you put multiple test cases into one folder, it becomes a test suite. And then we have test plans. Test plan is basically where you're describing the details of the testing itself. So that means what are the, in scope, out of scope, exit criteria, entry criteria, test data, who should you reach out to, and risk assumption, what to be tested and what not to be tested, right? Also, who will do what kind of testing and who will be your point of contact in different situations. So few things, right? I've just mentioned, but there are a lot more that goes into test plan, guys. Interfaces to the hardware and the software operating environment. So that's basically could be your QA environment where you will be doing a lot of your testing, internal and external documentations. This includes, even if you write test plan, that could be one of the document. If you write test strategy, that could be another document. So this is just coming from QA, but there are documents like requirement, there are design document, and there are other documents that you can actually go and read. So whenever a team thinks that something that they have developed and they need to provide more information to the rest of the team, they will create a document. They will create a detailed document so that way they don't forget later, or even it's easy for people to say, okay, wait a minute, I don't understand this feature. Let me go back and read the document. So a lot of your work is going to be reading. You just have to step back and relax and just read and take your time. Nobody's going to rush you. Nobody's going to be on your shoulder. It is okay to take 2 extra days to finish your work than finishing it early and did it incorrectly. So if you did your work incorrectly, what's going to happen? A QA guy making mistakes. Remember, we are there to find the mistakes, right? And you are making mistakes. So for example, emailing, you are very much a person who doesn't have a lot of patience, for example. If you wrote your email and sending it to the manager and you have 2 spelling error, it doesn't have a proper format and you just go ahead and send it. What does it say to the manager about your personality? Right? So it says that you're impatient and you really don't check your own work. And that's not the personality that we want, right? So QA, we have the opportunity to take as much as time as we need, but we shouldn't be making a lot of mistakes. Like, just take your time. Like, don't rush it. Don't try to finish it. Don't try to be the first one to hand in the work. Always double check, triple check your work before you do that. All right. The next one is effort. So software effort is basically specifications. So these are some of the key areas where we, the whole team, not only you, will be investing time and to make things better. So we have a specification, again, requirement is constantly being talked about. Things are going to come in and you'll find there are missing information, and then you'll provide that feedback and they will then fill in that information, right? So who's they? Product owner or developer, business analyst. So sometime, I guess in the modern software development team, you're going to see a product owner is also a business analyst, right? And it's because they can, right? Because they already know the product, but then they can also write the technical documents that they need to give it to the rest of the team. So you have to be really, really open-minded about this position that I'm talking about. Sometime you're going to see that your project manager is also a Scrum Master, right? So it's just that they're wearing multiple hats. If they can handle it, right? You may be also wearing multiple hats at some point. You may be doing 10% business analyst job and then 90% QA. And there are positions where it's called BSA, where not only that you will do testing, but you will also write the requirements. Okay. So you just have to be open-minded about these positions, because when you jump in a team, it's about what they need for you to focus on. It's not about, oh, I'm here only to write test cases and that's it. All right. That's never going to work. You join a team and say, hey, what can I do to help? What are the things that I can jump into? And it's not like that they want to mix and match. They will not say, okay, go ahead and fix things and go ahead and find things, because it doesn't go well, right? There is that bias that comes in. They may say, wait a minute, you seem like you have a lot of knowledge of our product. So can you help us writing some of the requirements? And that's it. They will ask you. You can always gladly say, I'm sorry, I have too much on my plate. I have to focus on the testing rather than helping you guys with the requirement. That is absolutely okay, right? But my take is, whenever you get new things to be new things in your plate, take it, because anything is an extra experience and it will help you in the future positions. And you might even change to be a BA, right? If that kind of personality you have. Product review happen constantly. They will do review before. Sometimes developers do the review before even testing happens, and they will go over with testers. But let's say when you are testing something and you have no idea, you feel like you were just given a requirement, but you don't know where to find things. The best possible thing that you can do is reach out to the specific developer who developed that feature, and you can tell them like, hey, is it possible to give me a 5 minutes demo? You know what they're going to do? They're going to be very happy to do that, because they work probably their ass off to build that feature, and now they would be happy to do a demo because they want to show off their work too. So now you jump on a call and he's actually guiding you to that feature, how it works. So now you know how to do the testing, right? Now you can have more understanding of the feature, but more importantly, you already know the basic functionality. Now you can go more advanced and try to break that feature and find any bugs. We have design document. Scheduling happens again in the team with multiple meetings. So sometimes you're going to see that, hey, let's jump on a call. So you found a bug and you're talking to Jeff, and Jeff is like, oh man, okay, I don't understand what you're saying. You know what? Do you have time? Let's jump on a call, right? So it'll be very normal for you to jump on a call whenever is necessary. But also there will be weekly meetings, like every day there will be stand-up meetings. And then you have sprint planning, sprint grooming, you have retrospective. So we'll talk about all of this meeting and what really goes on to those meetings and explain every single one of them. Feedback. You'll hear feedback rather quickly. So the feedback is gonna be every week almost, right? Every bi-weekly. So you'll see that teammates are coming and saying few things, and this is not to blame you. This is not to make sure that you do the right thing. This is also to make sure that proper expectation is set, and also the improvement. This is part of the continuous improvement. So in a meeting called retrospective, anybody can bring up any issues. So you can actually talk about and say, hey, I was talking to Jeff and he seems like he doesn't have time. I reach out. It would really, really help if he has 5 minutes for me before I start working on a story. So then everybody will be supportive about that. They will say, okay, we'll talk to Jeff, or you know what, Jeff might be in the meeting. So you'll say, hey, I'm so sorry, I was busy, but reach out and I'll try to give you that 5 minutes, right? So things will be talked about at the end, what went well, what didn't go well, and you will have the opportunity to be able to improve yourself or your teammates. Okay, competitive information acquisitions, test plan, custom surveying, usability data gathering, look and feel specification, software architecture, and lastly, programming, right? And it continues. So these are few, again, just think about these efforts, just remember the keywords. And okay, discussion, what is software engineering? What does testing, okay, where does the testing occurs? Okay. So I feel like we didn't really talk about a lot about the second question here. So I'll explain a little bit before we even go into this question. So what is software engineering? Software engineering is basically making of a software, whatever it takes, from building from scratch to nothing to something, right? It requires a planning, it requires process, and the process is called SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle, right? In software development lifecycle, we will first, the first one is actually requirement gathering. You know what, let me write those down real quick because I feel like yeah, okay. I feel like we need to, let me just go ahead and do that for you guys. Okay, open up a text, edit, okay. Okay, so SDLC, I feel like this requires a little bit more conversation, and I don't mind spending a lot more time in SDLC so you guys can understand what SDLC is, right? And I may just explain SDLC followed by before we go into the next one. So SDLC is what we do as a tester, right? What we do as a QA engineer, QA analyst, and that needs to be really, really understood solid. Because why? Because that is something that you do, right? You have to know what you do. Otherwise, it's going to be like, oh, I don't know my own work. So SDLC stands for, what is it, guys?
Software development test cycle or life cycle.
Okay. Software development life cycle. It's first one. Somebody tell me the first one. What is the first stage of?
Would it be requirement analysis?
Requirement analysis happens if you have requirement, but if you don't have requirement, what do you do?
Planning.
No, but if you don't have requirement, right, you have to first get it. No, requirement analysis happens if you really have it, right? So that is not part of the SDLC. Requirement gathering. So you have to get requirements, right, before you even build a software. So the requirement gathering, when does it happen? So think about this way: a product owner who could be part of the team, who could be a manager. So for example, a product owner in Chase Bank for tellers. It could be the head of the teller, right? So his job is to be a product owner, so that way he can think behalf of his employees, which is all of the tellers in United States, correct? So now this guy know what he needs to make his tellers more efficient. This guy will also probably understand what are some of the struggle the tellers going through when they're using the application, because He's hearing about them constantly. So now this guy has feature requests. This guy have requests to make some changes to that teller system. So now this specific product owner will write a document, which is going to be roughly written. And he's going to write a document that will say, I would love if we have this ability in our software, right? So that's like user story or requirement or use case or whatever you want to name, right? So this requirement then is taken by a BA, business analyst, and his job is not to define the product. His job is to fulfill and understand what the product owner is asking in terms of that feature. He will then have multiple meetings and communication with the product owner, get the full knowledge and understanding for a few reasons. Number one is that he will be the point of contact for the rest of the team. So he will be the first person that you will ask before going into the product owner, right? Remember, product owner is maybe a director of the teller, right? The whole teller department. So now this guy is busy. You don't go to him directly. You just basically go to BA. BA is going to take that rough document and say, okay, what can I do to make it more readable for technical people? Are you a technical person? The answer is yes, you are. So you're part of the technical group. So it's about what they need inside of the document. So that way everybody understands and they're all in the same page. So now BA is going to start working on that feature. He's going to spend weeks. So you'll see that the document is very much solid. It has all the expected information. And so now he's going to work behind the scene. He's going to work closely with the tellers. He might even do interview of the tellers to say, hey, is this feature really what you want? How this is going to save time, how this is going to save company money. So all the business decision comes based off of the efficiency and money saving situation for the company. It's not about you as a QA engineer saying, oh, I don't like this, let's change this. You know what, this product doesn't feel. We don't know, right? We don't know really what is needed. So that's why it's really, really important for the product owners and BA to interview their own users. After that, the requirement is gathered, right? Requirement is gathered at this point because BA already took that information and wrote a document that could be understood by technical people, okay? The next one is design phase. In the design phase, UX designer, they make critical decisions to say what color things should be, what are the size, the font, style, any of this nature, looks and feels. The feature is already described in requirements, so they will actually design around that document to make sure that document they're following what needs to be done, but also making the design as easy as possible, and it is user friendly. So they will also work behalf of the users as well, and they will also make sure that the whole entire application is uniform, and it's not just like, okay, here and there, a few buttons different color, and it doesn't have the uniformity. So this is how the designers will do that, right? Now designs, like, think about this way, this has its own life cycle, this has its own life cycle. We don't go into that is because that is not our department, right? So we'll go probably into testing more, so that way you guys can understand what testing is. The next one is implementation and coding. All right, guys, let's mute. All right. Let's talk about one thing, guys. If you doing this class, try not to join from a phone. Few reasons. One is that you will not be able to fully get the full benefit out of this class, because you could literally find better class in YouTube and do the same. So concentration and being here at this moment with me matters more than you watching the video, because you can really just go in. We have thousands of videos by now from previous classes. We could have easily delivered those. But the reason why we do live class, because we need the interaction and also the focus and concentration, guys. Try not to have a need for seeing the class again later, right? Try to do everything right now so you don't have to spend another 2 hours extra. You can go right to the homework. So that's what I tell people. But if you feel like you have a need for going and finding the video and doing the class again, and you do it, then that's fine. That means you have the patience. But if you, I don't know how many people have that kind of patience. So try to focus, be here, and trust me, it's going to be enjoyable. In 3-4 classes, you're going to be enjoying. But if you don't do that soon, as soon as we hit the automation class, you're going to see that your interest is all the way to the level of the floor, because things doesn't make sense anymore. Everything is different. We're talking about different terms and tools, and you have no idea, right? Because again, concentration, just because these few classes in the beginning is easy doesn't mean this is how it's going to be all the time. All right, phase number 3, guys. Who can help me with phase 3?
Coding implementation.
So implementation and coding, right? So implementation is basically, again, you're translating the design and requirement into a machine readable form. In a result, you're building a software that is coding. So coding has their own life cycle, developers, and I don't want to go into that, right? It's just like testing as well. So number 4, let's go into that, and then we will then expand more. So number 4, what is number 4, guys? Testing, right? So this is where we come in, right? Now you may say, okay, so then why should a tester start early? You know, why can't they come in when the testing is ready to be tested? Who wants to answer this question? And that was part of the, last homework. So everybody should be raising their hand right now.
After this, it should be deployment, right? Because we have to test it before it deploys and all that.
No, but then do I need tester at the time of gathering requirement? Do I need tester at the time of designing? Do I need tester at the time of
Each
coding?
of those, the design and the coding, they always need testing. It needs to be tested.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, right? So why would we don't test design. We never even talked about it. We don't test the requirement. We never talked about it. Why would you test the design? The design is literally, it's like, think about a Bible. This is what it says. We don't change. If they can come up with this, that's what we want to see. Requirement, same thing. If they came up with this, they wrote this word, that's what exactly we want to see. Even if they made a mistake, we're still gonna go ahead and raise that as an issue until they fix their own mistake in the requirement documents. So then why should I pay for tester? Let's say you specifically, why should I pay for you and hire you 2 months early when there is no testing, really, there is no testing involved? Why would I pay 2 months early salaries, guys?
He's writing the test scenario and test cases.
Yes, that is one. What else? Okay, so that's correct, right? Because now at this point, what do? You don't just come in and just do nothing. You get to look at the requirement, things that are done. If the requirement is done already, like some of the requirements will be done early, you can start to write test plan. You can start to get your own department set and ready, right? It's like, think about it. You're prepping for the big day. So if you're working in a restaurant, you're prepping for the lunch hour. So just like that. But most importantly, product knowledge is very much essential. Otherwise, look, testers are easy to find. They can hire people in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh for $10 an hour, right? $5 an hour testers. But those testers are not as good as onshore. The reason why they want to pay you $50 to $60 or $70 an hour for the same job is because you will think outside the box, number one. Number two is that you have product knowledge. You will take your time to understand what the product is, right? So that requires for you to be joining the team as early as possible to know exactly what's going on. You're going to review the requirement as they're coming, and you're going to start to write test plan and test scenarios, and you're going to basically write some of the documentation as early as possible. So that way, when the testing is done, you're ready to go. You don't have to start from scratch, right? But most importantly, you get used to the team, you get used to the process, you get used to the tools and technology, which really, really is helpful for the team, because now they don't have to start from scratch. You already have some knowledge. So the tester should start as early as possible. The keyword is as early as possible. So if it is possible for them to start at the requirement gathering, then it's good because they can still look at the requirement and give you some feedback. But most importantly, they can start writing their test plans, okay, and test strategies. They can look at the design and they can try to also compare the design with the requirement, but most importantly, they can look at the design and have expectations, right? This is how it should be. So that gains more and more product knowledge, which is very, very valuable. It's not about like just coming in and getting the work done, because certainly it's possible somebody joining the team and try to get everything done in like 2 days, 3 days. That's not what they're looking for, right? And the reason is because, yes, they may have somebody come in 2 days, everything is done. But the problem is he may miss that one critical issue that will put the company out of business, right? So it is very critical. It is very, very critical. Your job is very much critical, more critical than a developer, because developer built it, but then testing actually proving that it is market ready. It is ready for the end user, okay? Otherwise, they will not even release it. So who's more important, right? So think about that way. I have plenty of people that went into development right after this course, and because we also do entry-level Java developer hirings, and that happens actually in-house. But then very quickly, 6 months, some people actually 6 months later, oh, I want to get it back into QA. Okay, no problem. Some people a year later, oh, I want to get back into QA because it's more, more laid back, right? But the reason why we're more laid back and they give us the time that we need is because we basically go through so many scenarios. We try to break the system, which takes time. We don't just go ahead and, just look at it, did few testing and think that, okay, it's working, all right? Otherwise, we're not doing our job, right? We have to be able to find some issues, right? And it takes time. All right. Number 5, who can answer number 5? What is number 5, guys, after testing?
Deployment.
Yep, release. Well, I can add a few more processes in here, but I will just go right to the release for now. And then, so release and deployment, same thing, okay? Number 6.
Delivery maintenance.
So maintenance basically happens is when maintenance takes place, right? So right after the release, your software is ready to go. For example, it's built already, customers are using it, they're happy and paying for it and all that stuff. So why do we even have maintenance come in? Maintenance happens is whenever you request a new feature to the existing application, or a tester is found some sort of bugs after testing, or even a user is coming back with suggestions and say, hey, I really, really love your tool or application, but this specific area, I feel like you can improve. And that was taken and by the, let's say, product owner, and says, okay, wait a minute, this is a really good suggestion. We're going to go ahead and make that improvement. So maintenance basically cannot be done without a few things, right? What do you think is going to happen next after, let's say you did find some maintenance related task? What's going to happen next, right? The first thing is we have to gather the requirement. Even if there's a new feature or even existing feature enhancement is needed, we still want to know what is the requirement. So then we gather the requirement, right? After that, we want to make sure that basically that's the first thing, requirement. So if you do come up with suggestion, if you do come up with some sort of feature request from the actual user, they need to tell you a requirement. The requirement may be done by BA after his understanding of the ask. What is the wish list, right? He understands it, and then only then requirement is gathered. So number 1 is done. Once the requirement is done, then it moves into the next stage, which is design. So requirement is done, now the designer can say, oh, wait a minute, now I can design this. I know exactly what they're looking for. If the design and requirement is done, then developers can go ahead and do their coding, right? If the coding is done, that was implemented, okay? And it's ready to be released, but testing is essential. It needs to be done before even we can think about release. So testing can take place because it's done. After that, release can happen because testing was done, okay? So do you see a pattern here, right? Do you see any pattern? You guys know what recycle sign look like? So now you got your second part of the answer. It's called life cycle. Why do you think we call life cycle? This is
Goes on and on.
yeah, it will be on and on and on. We don't skip a stage, even for maintenance, adding new features. And therefore, as long as the product is live, as long as the product is out there making money, it will be always be maintained. And it will follow this specific process in order to add new feature, in order to enhance the existing feature and all. But we'll go more into detail in testing to say what is required to be a test engineer. What are the engineering process of testing? Because this will help us to do our job right? And we have to really get into an understanding what is something that we normally need to carry out in order to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Okay, so now we learned about the whole building block of softwares. What are the stages that is necessary to build a software? And one of the stages is testing, and testing happened to be our department. So let's expand on that. But keep in mind that expansion can be done for any of the stages, and we will have similar engineering process, which is followed by the appropriate, responsible employees in your team or coworker in your team. If they're a designer, they're called UX designer, and they will follow their part, right? But our part is testing. You don't need to go more into designing because you are not a designer, right? But let's talk about ourselves. What do we do as a tester? What is the first thing we do as a tester? Right, in STLC. So let's talk about STLC, right? Stands for Software Testing Life Cycle, okay?
The first one would be requirement analysis because we already have the information given to us from the SDLC.
Right, so this information is already, gathered. We're already in stage 4. That means we have the requirement, right? We also have the design document, and also we have the implementation. So that means we're really ready to go in terms of testing. So the first logical thing, the first engineering process, and it may sound very, very basic to you guys, like, oh, really? I thought it was going to be sophisticated process. The basic thing is that all you have to do is understand the requirement, right? So you study the requirement analysis, the requirement. And what do you do if you don't understand, guys? What do you do? Anybody wants to?
You talk to the BA or the product owner.
So you talk to the responsible coworkers who actually was part of developing that specific requirement, right? So now that could be your BA, and that could be your product owner, and whoever you can actually reach out. So that could be product owner, BA, or sometime you'll see that even the managers happen to have knowledge about that specific ask because they were part of the early meetings. So whoever you can find information, clarification is 120% necessary. Because why? Because we as a QA engineers, we as a QA analyst, we match apple to apple. We don't do orange to apple. Okay. We create expectation based off of the documents. Those expectations are apples, and then we're going to also go ahead and compare that with Apple, which is the actual implementation after the coding, right? What happened? Did they follow the exact guideline? Did they create the exact thing? The color matches, even the slight color look. Let's say they were asking for sky blue, but you got dark blue. No good, no good. If a specific word is underlined, but then on the requirement, it doesn't mention anything about being underlined, it's not good. If there is a period is missing in a paragraph, but then the requirement says it shouldn't, then we have a problem. These small things that you will find, trust me, you're never gonna find, I guess it's almost impossible for you to find the bigger bug where you just log in and all of a sudden nothing works. You logged in and nothing works. Like, oh no, it's not working. That's never the situation, because nobody is dumb enough to do that in a software development team. They don't want to embarrass themselves, especially developers. So the issues that we will find is something that is very nitpick, something that is people really don't pay attention to. The issues will be always like, it was really tedious, so they forgot one specific part of that. So that's why, right? The flows are going to come from, because there are repeated stuff and because there is a lot of things that they had to go through and they missed one, right? That's how the bugs is going to be. It's never going to be like the glorious bugs that you're thinking right now. Like I logged in and all of a sudden I see that everything is crashed, right? That's never happens. If you do happen to face that kind of problem, you logged in and everything crashes because maybe the server is being maintained, or maybe the server is down for the time being. So you don't go ahead and write 10 bugs and then start making a lot of noise and start sending emails and things like that. But you can always reach out to the team to say, hey, is it down? Don't assume like, oh, there is a bug and nothing is working. So, okay, is the server down, right? That's what you need to ask. But the reason why I'm mentioning is because once you understand your requirement, once you know exactly what the requirement is, only then you can find those tiny, missing or tedious information that developer missed, and now you're raising that as an issue. This will give you the respect that you need in your team. This will basically tell the developer that yes, next time if they do not follow the requirement, and next time if they don't pay attention to the tiny details, you're going to raise that, and there is no way that they will just get past you. And now the developer will do a little bit harder work, right? They will also continue to improve themselves to say, okay, I don't want this QA to come to me like 10 times. It's a negative thing, right? For them, it's a negative thing. If the QA has to reach out to them for like 10 different times just to fix 10 different smaller issues, it really doesn't make them look good. So they will improve as well. So your action really improves a developer skill sets, and that's a positive for them. So never ever feel bad for pointing out issues because you're improving them. So just keep that in mind. So study the requirement is the first thing. This is the equation. This is actually the formula. So that way you can find as many bugs as possible. Okay, so impatient, if you don't want to read, if you don't want to reach out, if you don't want to have meetings, that's when we're going to see that bugs is being leaked to the actual user's hand, right? And now the users are going to find it and they're going to ask questions. How come you didn't find this bug, right? So again, we have to do our job correctly, and requirement is the first thing that will make us more and more efficient. What is the second one? Second page in your STLC, guys.
Test planning.
Test planning. Okay, test planning. Test planning is basically, again, applies to a specific methodology. So we'll talk about it, but I'll put it as a whole here for best practice. So in perfect world, yes, test planning is the next thing, where you think about what is in scope and out of scope. Because if you are testing, let's say, if you're testing a specific areas of the application, and just by going there, you feel like, oh, this area, I feel like, oh, there's bug in the other areas too, and you go nuts. And you basically almost like testing the whole application. That's really not being efficient at this point, because now you never finish that task, right? Because you're just going over and doing other people's work also. So you have to understand what is part of the testing, what is in scope and what is going to be out of scope. Okay. Guys, give me 1 second. I'm getting some noise. I'm going to ask them to, tone it down a little bit. All right, I'm back. So at any time, if the screen doesn't match with my voice, that means maybe I have slow internet, but let me know so I can wait for you guys. So test planning, again, it happens in a perfect world in a specific methodology. We'll talk about it, but just keep in mind, test planning is to make sure that exactly what needs to be tested and not go over it. If you go over it, it's going to be too much, right? And you can't stop, and you'll basically have that ripple effect. So you want to know exactly when testing is done. What can you finish that will say you're done testing that specific story, that specific requirement, right? So all of this list, and we'll talk about that. That's called definition of done. But we'll talk about that in the future. But test planning is going to help you understand who you should reach out, what are the risk assumptions, test data in the main contract, and anything that you need in order to do the next process. What are the next steps then? What is the next number 3?
Test case development. It's on the scope of
Test
criteria.
design.
Okay. Somebody says test case, somebody says what else? It's not the next thing. So
Test design.
no. Test design probably the next one you want to think about. But what else, guys?
Test scenario.
Test scenario. Okay, test scenarios are next. And now this is as a manager myself, I usually don't give them a discount on test scenario, right? I need those test scenarios to be written. And part of the reason I will tell you. So again, you working in a development team, you're an engineer, and you have your own choice, right? So you join a team and you'll see that some QA team, they will choose not to do this 2 and 3. They will skip and they'll go right to the test cases or right to writing the test. And they can, right? Because again, they are engineers. So nobody try to, if you're slashing your own SDLC and remove some of the process, really, that means you're really efficient and you don't need those process, or maybe you don't know that you have to add those and maybe become more and more efficient. So it's one of the other. So if you realize something is missing in your team and you can really make the use of it, then add it, but not on your first job. First job, listen and learn and just stay quiet and do your work. All right. And the second one, if you happen to finish your first year, second year, and then now you have more understanding, only then you come up with suggestions. But test scenarios sometimes being skipped is because test scenario is identical to test cases, but test cases has a bit more information in order for you to carry out testing. So it's logical and that some teams will say, okay, we don't need test scenarios because we're writing them anyway. But the argument that I come up with, why do we need to write test scenarios, is because it is almost like brainstorming. You sit down and you write a blueprint of what are the test cases should be. So you write all the scenarios ahead of time, which will give your product owner the opportunity to come and review them and tell you that you have coverage, you have 100% coverage, or you have 99% coverage. And then you can continue to work more hard to write your test cases. So you're not just kind of going and doing the next step without confirmation, right? So that's why I really like this process. Test scenarios gonna be something that you will do it in your head. If they don't really require you to do it, then you might have to just do that on the fly. I would say just do it on your Excel sheet locally. And obviously that document is never going to be used by them. So, but at least you will be able to brainstorm before you go ahead and write test cases. Now, let's talk about test scenario, because we talked about test planning and we know what test plan document looks like. We talked about it has details, testing related details, test strategy, approaches, intended activities, who will do the testing, what are the use cases, what are the test data, who will produce the test data. These are few information, obviously a lot more to talk about, but now test scenarios, guys. What is test scenario? And somebody explain to me. What is test scenario? Anybody wanna take, I mean, like I said, guessing is fine, right? As long as, you know, this is, again, this is your second in class, and I don't expect you to know STLC. So guessing is totally fine, but at least educated guess, which will at least, you know, make us more interactive here. So
It's like a hypothetical situation that you, it's during the test cases, right?
no, test case is not even in the question right now. The question is, what is test scenario?
It's like brainstorming how you are going to execute your tests.
How you're going to execute tests is basically also the next step.
Yeah,
Um,
Is
yeah.
it
how
like
you are going to
oh.
do your test. Your approach toward this
That
testing.
sounds, yeah, that sounds like it, but I'll explain, right? So you have to think like the end user and think that a user, how many ways they will be able to use that specific feature or functionalities, right? Because the software is given to the user and we don't monitor them. We don't send an FBI on their shoulder to say, don't do this and don't do that. They have absolutely everything that they can do. But the question is, can our system handle it? Okay, so now we're going to do all of these things. There will be unfortunate things that we're going to try to our software to see if our software can handle it, right? These are test scenarios. So a better example I'll give you in a real life, so that way this is the one example that I use on most of my classes. So you're going from, let's say, Jackson Heights to Manhattan and Times Square. Think about the possibilities that you have in terms of transportation method, right? What can a person take to get to Manhattan? And now you absolutely cannot tell them what to take. So now come up with all the possible combination that the people will follow, right? One person may take bus, the other person take walk and bus, then the next person can take train and bus. One person literally can just walk there. One person also can just take bicycle. Somebody can skate, and you can go on and on and on and on and combine all the possibilities, right? Now you ended up getting like 500 test scenarios. So that is a very big feature. Like going from Jackson Heights to Times Square has a lot of variables. There are a lot of options that needs to be combined at least once. It's almost like, think about it, okay? Another, okay, this is basically a riddle, right? If you have 10 people in the room, okay, how many hand shakes it will take in order to, like, basically to have everyone shake hands at least once? Okay, so that means, right? So how many, okay, let's see how many people can solve this riddle, and then we go, because this is, again, the riddle has something to do with scenarios, guys, because this is going to make you think outside of the box, right? This is where STLC is where you become a real tester, right? So now my question to you guys, I'm giving you this riddle, make it a little bit fun for you guys here. My question is, you got 10 people in the room. How many handshakes will it take in order to have everyone shakes everybody's hands, right? Everybody's hands just once. So number one guy shakes hands with number two, but then he's also missing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So number one guy shakes hands with 9 people already. How many? The number two guy, that's a clue. Number two guy is going to shake hands and then give me the count. All right.
11?
You're saying 11 handshakes is going to be done.
Yep.
Okay, you weren't thinking hard enough. If this
Would it
was
be
that
90?
easy. No. Let's see, think harder, guys, think harder, because like this is where you want to like think a little bit like a tester in this case, right? Critical, think critical, right? So you got number one, shake hand with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So let's say 9. Let's just make 9. I don't want to have more an extra digit, right? So single digit. Let's work with 9. Okay. Number 2. The guy number 2 is there. Now, guy number 2 already shook hand with number 1. Correct?
90?
So then he is doing 3. So now he's including 2 and 1 because 2 is himself and 1 is the guy this person already shook hand, yeah? So the first guy did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the first guy did 8 handshakes, okay? The second guy, okay, I'm gonna resemble the guy with this, okay? The second guy did it 7. You guys getting the logic here, right? Third guy did 6. You know why? Because he already shook hand with 2 and 1. Make sense? Why? How come he did shake hand already with 2? Because this guy was responsible to shook hand with whoever he didn't just yet. So he did it already. Okay. Now we go into
Maybe
number
36.
Number 4 guy. Yeah, it's around 36, I believe. So number 4 guy now is doing 5, right? 5 times because number 4 already shook hand with 3, 2, and 1. Right? Number 5 guy already shook hand with 1, 2, 3, 4, right? All 4 people. So therefore he was gonna shake hand with 4 more, right? He's gonna exclude himself because he can't, right? He can't shake hand by himself. Number 4 is gonna do 3. So it's really, once you have the understanding, it's easy, right? So these riddles, who gives you guys these riddles actually? In QA, or if the company or a manager who doesn't really care about listening to your technical answers, they will give you some things like that sometime. They don't really care about, what tools or what, they care about what's in your brain, then they will give you a riddle, okay? So I've seen people, like, I guess managers do that, even to me. And there are other riddles that are out there. Like, for example, one that I really like is that the light bulb, right? There's 2 rooms with 2 light bulbs and there's 1 switch outside. How do you know, which, oh, there's 3 switches. And how do you know which switch is responsible for lighting up the light, right? In the room. Sorry, not 2 rooms, just 1 room. That's another one. But these are really interesting riddles. Now think about this way, the same way, guys. The same exact mindset needs to be applied here when it comes about test scenarios. You cannot just think everything is easy. You have to be able to expand and try to make it more critical. That's why you are there, right? Otherwise, testing developers could have done your testing and that's it. So test scenarios really think like a user and see what is the way that the user will interact. It's not about what are the way that the company wants the users to interact. It's about what the user has. What are the abilities the user has, basically, right? What can they do? It's not about what they should do. We don't care about what they should do because we know they're supposed to go and apply for a loan, for example. But we don't know if that person is going to go and apply and try to apply and then like click here and there and then just bail out, right? Bail out in the midway. We don't know if that person is going to submit and later he's going to log in and delete his, application. We don't know that, right? We don't know what goes into the user action. So we have to account for every possible scenarios that there is out there in order for us to be able to combat that in the real life scenario. So if you were to, let's say for example, your company is creating a new feature and you miss some of the critical scenarios where you didn't test certain things. For example, everything that's described in the requirement is working perfectly fine, but you didn't test what happens if the user do not have, let's say, specific balance or some of the negative things, right? You didn't go beyond the requirement. You didn't come up with anything extra. You didn't think critically, right? To come up with all these other scenarios. And now the user have the ability to do a few things that will actually make the company lose money. But most importantly, that will be embarrassing for us because we didn't really do our job then. If you're just looking at the requirement and you tested exactly what's there, then that is like the basics of basics. And it's like we didn't do our job. We just got paid for really nothing, right? So that's where test scenario comes in to rescue you. Here, we just basically going to come up with all possible combination of scenarios that will make you into a tester. Now, with that question, guys, I'm gonna pick one of you guys right now. All right, let's make it a little bit more fun. All right, Anika, so I'm gonna give you a scenario and you're gonna tell me some test scenarios, okay? Pen was just invented, a pen, okay? Just invented by my company, and you were the first person to see that pen and you were the first tester. After you tested, we're gonna go ahead and reproduce. We're gonna mass produce that pen into like billions and sell them, right? Now your responsibility to basically test it. What are the scenarios that you will do? Like what are some scenarios that you will test? And keep in mind, the reason I mentioned pen is because you already know what pen and what pen does. So the requirement is you already know. So you can actually use whatever you know about the pen as requirement. Just a pen. And this was for Anika. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys when I ask you guys a question, 5 seconds later, I'm gonna find somebody else.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm just thinking. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So,
You can say 1, I will do this, 2, I will do this, and 3, and just keep going until I say, okay, enough, right?
like first to think about like what kind of a pen it is, right? So if it's so does it have
Just choose one. You can assume the one that you really, really like and just go from there. Everybody knows what pen is. So the requirement is there already for you.
okay, so whether it has ink, so is it like how smooth, or when we're
Okay, that's the one. Go ahead.
so like when you're writing it, is the ink smooth? So like it doesn't I don't know.
Okay, so anytime you answer this type of questions or anytime you come up with scenarios, always go from high priority to low priority. Seeing the ink, the smoothness of the ink is probably not the highest of the highest priority. It is on higher there, medium maybe. So you want to say if the pen is actually something that can write, right? That's the first basic scenario. Then you want to see that if the pen can be handheld, because if I can even hold it, then the writing is out of the question, right? So that's also a high priority scenario. You want to see if the pen is, drop proof. So what if somebody buys it, drops it, and now it's no longer working, all right? Now the smoothness can come in. If pen is there to write, can I appropriately write a paragraph? Can I write an essay and see still the pen working? So see the extended period of time, put some stress on the pen to see if the pen is able to perform as good as when you first brought it. And then you can do more. Like now you can do nice to have features. Nice to have features is if the pen has a ability to hook up on your pocket, right? Somewhere. If the pen has ability to press and basically open and close the ballpoint where you can actually write. If the pen has a rubber piece where your hands doesn't hurt when you write. So basically, these are nice to have features. These are basically maybe low priority. These are UX and UI kind of feature. And then you can go on and on and on and on, right? So in an interview, this question, you never stop. You do not stop until they said, okay, wait a minute, that's enough, that's enough, that's enough. We got it, we know you know this. Okay, fine, let's go. Move on to the next question. So we usually just keep going. Now, the next question for another person, guys. And the same exact question, Saif, like, let's see what are some of the scenarios that you can come up with. A vending machine was just invented, right, by your company, and they're excited, but they don't want to put that out there and kind of have a business failure. They want to make sure that the right people can dispense the right product after making some payments and things like that. But you know what vending machine is, so you can come up with whatever requirements in your mind in order to create the test scenarios. So give me test scenarios for vending machine.
See if it correctly takes payments and gives you the right amount of change. Because I remember this one time I got robbed by a vending machine to give me back my money.
Mhm.
So you gotta make sure you it gives the right money, and say I want like a crunch bar that's on C3. If I type in C3, it'll dispense C3. It doesn't, and it'll dispense the thing all the way through. It won't just like slowly dispense it and stop halfway. Or you type C3 and it gives you something from D4, so it does the correct you type the correct denominator number. I don't know the specific word, but you have to type in the correct, you put the input and it gives you the correct output.
Mhm. What else? Keep going.
Make sure it is safe, because I don't know, or when it drops, make sure it's easily accessible, so it drops in the bin where you pick it up. It doesn't like drop anywhere else. Make sure it is robbery proof, I guess. I don't know. So like, I always try to like steal something from the vending machine. I always try to get my hand in there. Sometimes it works. So
Mhm.
it needs to be a machine where that can't happen.
Okay.
But it also has to be safe. You can't have something, because kids will be kids and they'll try to do it. So you don't want something that will chop off their hand or something, because a lawsuit will happen.
Mhm. Kids are the end user, right? The user have absolutely everything, whatever they want to. They can even use a crowbar.
Yeah,
They can even try to
exactly.
break the glass or whatever is the case. So end
Yeah.
user, you have no control over. So now, based on that, you come up with all the scenarios. No, that was good enough. So that's why I'm stopping you. So similar to that, guys, like you may say, okay, nobody's gonna talk about pen and nobody's gonna talk about vending machines. Surprising thing is, vending machine is one of the highly asked questions in an interview, especially if the manager wants to know what's under the hood, what's under, basically how you think, right? What makes you a good QA? And even the answer to what makes you a good QA is not like, oh, I can do this, I'm a fast learner and this. No, you're gonna say, well, I don't easily get excited by seeing things working right away, because I know there is absolutely something that I can find. I think critically. I've always come up with all possible combination of scenarios that really sometimes surprises the developers that they couldn't even find themselves. Like you have to deliver. Like everybody is looking for number one. So some of the misunderstanding that I've noticed when I did this class at some point, people think they're just going to say something gibberish, something in English that will make partial sense, and then managers and people on the other side is just going to listen and hire you. It's never going to be the case, guys. Trust me. Just do it the hard way. Just tell yourself it's never going to be the case. It's all about you understanding. Therefore, you can actually explain it to another person. And the sooner you actually get that, the sooner you will welcome learning and opening up your mind. Otherwise, you may think like, oh man, I just get, what? I've been passing classes in college even without studying, I'll be fine. Here, this is a career orientated. So even if you are fine, you will suffer after joining, right? You will basically have no clue what's happening in your team. So that's why, again, just pay attention to yourself. This will be very, very helpful even after you get this job. Okay, so next stage, we spend a lot of time test scenarios because there are reasons, right? But what is the next stage, guys? What is
I
the
have a
next
question.
stage?
I have a
Yeah.
quick question.
Go
I
ahead.
know the STLC, like if, I remember from the last batch, like this,
Mhm.
the sets were different. And if I go online, they'll give me like different like steps. So like in a interview, will they like specifically say like, what are the steps, or because it seems like if I talk to 100 QAs, I'll get like
Mhm.
80 different answers.
That's fine. Yeah, that's something that I will tell you, is that even if you write SDLC, like this is not the exact picture, right? So let me open up, give you some example, and then kind of explain why that is the case, right? So if I say SDLC, right? And okay, let me just erase this annotation, clear. Okay, so you go to SDLC and you go ahead and click on the image, and so the fastest way for you to see it, right? And you see like software development lifecycle, they got starting, planning, right? They then have number 2, analysis, design, implementation, testing. The name and everything are different. Sometimes what they do, they combine 2 into 1. Sometimes they divide 2 into 2 different things. So planning and analysis is actually requirement gathering together. So again, everything that we will say, take it with a grain of salt, because it will have a little bit of fluctuation with other people's environment and their own understanding, plus their own company and the process that they followed. What you want to do is that don't think one is the right and the other one is not right. You want to say, okay, this is maybe and maybe. So you can see planning analysis. What do you do in this case, right? You go out and talk to end users, you go out and find what needs to be done. You start with planning, but then at this point, you'll be doing analysis. The outcome of these two is actually a requirement document, right? You can't just plan analysis and then just continue to design without any sort of document, right? So you have to basically make some few small assumptions. Now, if I go into another SDLC, let's look at it. Planning is the first one, and then design. Okay, let's see. Let me go into the one that looks more like our one. Requirement analysis, right there. System design, implementation, testing, and development. So requirement analysis, but then they are not talking about how they got the requirement. Okay, so it has to come from somewhere. So they're just assuming that you already know requirement is gathered. Now they're analyzing the requirement before it goes into system design, and then goes into implementation, testing, and development. So there will be 90, sometimes 90% to 80% similarities in terms of what we are saying, but know that there are some assumptions being made. There will be few steps, maybe other, whoever's talking about it will skip, or maybe they will add, right? I can actually add a few steps in between right here, testing, right? Before going to development, we need to think about UAT and UAT testing. So UAT test design, UAT testing is going to be 2 different processes, where you as a QA engineer responsible to deliver all the documentation and information the UAT testers need. If they need a demo, you give them a demo, okay? Which we haven't even talked about. So again, we're going to try to, combine more than just one thing. So that's when Shanto Bhai comes in and he does his training, you'll see there is a difference between my explanation and his, is because he comes from a very different background. His experience is very different than mine and the companies that I work with. So you'll get 2 different perspectives. I would say embrace both and think that you have 2 different, kind of experience at this point, instead of like saying, okay, this is right and this is wrong. So it's always going to be like that. If for some of you guys ended up being another school because let's say something happened and you're learning, just embrace their side as well and embrace ours, because it's always going to be 2 different perspectives based on the own understanding. And we sometimes simplify in order to make sure that you guys can understand properly. So that is one reason. Okay, hopefully that answered. But number 4, guys, let's go into number 4. So today, I guess we're only going to talk about SDLC and STLC. So that way, when we give you the homework, you don't feel like it's overwhelmed, and we'll have to take on the slide the next class. But the next class, we're going to probably finish the slide, and then we go right into syllabus. At that point, you will start to follow more into what's coming. So the first 3 weeks is basically just for you to have the mindset and get used to what we're doing here. Get used to the homework process, get used to my voice, get used to understanding where we're heading, and get also used to that there is discipline, guys. The discipline is, everybody here is an adult. We basically here to help you with a job. But like I said, anybody here from previous batch, think about it. Like if you miss 3 homework, I will drop you. And it's not, there is no question. And you're not going to be able to enter again. So if you committed to this badge and you miss 3 homeworks without explanation, if you miss 3 classes without explanation, we're going to drop you. And regardless of your status in terms of payment or anything, is because why? Because you still have an opportunity to say, hey, I'm missing this homework because I have this waiting to go to. Okay, that's not a problem. Everybody's a human. That's fine. But if you don't communicate, that means you're not interested. And also you are really not into the class. So therefore, we're going to save you time. We're going to save you time to make sure that you don't have to waste your time like this. So, and I'm strictly saying it might sound harsh, apologize for that, but 3 homework and 3 missing classes without notification will be at least something that I let all of the rest of the DTA team know. They will basically remove you from every possible places that you have your information in. So just keep that in mind, because we want to take you seriously. Therefore, you take us seriously, and it will be mutual. Everything is going to be mutual. Even if you go to the market looking for a job, trust me, we spend countless days and hours to sit down with you for every single interview for you to be successful in that interview. It's never going to be the case where 6 months class later you become an expert and you go ahead and pass all those interviews without any sort of help, right? You need prepping. You need to understand what kind of question they may ask. You need basically the guidance from day 1 to all the way to first year of your job. You will call us. You will basically tell us like, hey, 6 months goes by and now this is happening to me. What can I do? And that's when you're going to find us to help you, right? So it's not for one day. Don't get upset if I say something in one day. Just don't kill the long-term relationship, guys. And this is true for any other establishment. Wherever you go, don't let anger come in your way of success. And just try to do the right thing, because 6 months later, nobody's going to ask you to do homework, right? It's only for a small period of time and you'll be an expert. Okay, number 4, guys. I spoke too much, but again, ask questions if you guys have any. Number 4 is nobody came up with is test cases. So you write test cases, basically. Test cases and test scenario, I said there is a very small difference. Test scenario is basically you're writing all possible combination of use cases, meaning what the user will be doing to that part of the application. And test cases is basically you take that, right? You take all the test scenario. Each test scenario will be a test case by providing details. What are the steps that the user will follow to get to that part of the application? What are the test data they need, meaning username and password? What they should expect when they do certain things. So you're going to be writing all that in details, and I'll show you a small test case right here. And you're going to be writing all that in order to basically make your life easy in the future, because the reason why we write test cases is because repeated testing. So this is how it is, right? It says verify this, test case this, precondition, steps, and you follow that, right? So the way that we write our test cases is that we keep in mind that if I write my test case and I go ahead and take somebody from high school or college and tell them to follow, they should be able to follow and test it, right? And it's because we go through already too many things, right? The end result is test case. That means we do all these 3 or 4 items process in the very beginning to come up with a test case document. And this test case document will be used over and over and over again. So whenever necessary, the testing will be done based on that specific baseline that you create. So the test case in this case is a document that will give a step-by-step process on how to do the testing, and it is a baseline. So that means if tomorrow maintenance takes place and they go ahead and developed a new feature, at the time of testing, not only that you'll test the new feature, but also you have to go back and execute all of your existing test cases. What you want to do is that you want to find out this new feature is not messing up any existing features. Okay, that is called regression testing. So at the time of regression testing, you will need your test cases. Imagine you don't have those test cases. All you have is test scenario. Now you say one line test scenarios like I will do this, I will do that, all of that, right? But it doesn't have the details. Test cases will have consistent details with consistent test data. So therefore the outcome is all the time will be same thing. The outcome and the result will be always same thing. And so it's going to be easier for you to find a bug. Otherwise, what is bug? If there is no baseline, oh, maybe this is how it works. There is no maybe, there is no room for maybe, guys. And that's why we do what we do and follow the entire STLC. What is next? Number 5.
Test environment setup.
Well, that could be, that is, test environment setup is something that we don't do. It's already is done. So, and assuming that it was done already, right? So let's skip that because it's done.
Test execution.
Test execution is the next one. So, okay. So environment is done by another team, whatever is the case, let's just think that it is done. Okay. So now test execution, what does that mean? Test execution?
Like that our actual result is equal to our expected result.
That's it. So now when you create test cases, you list expected results, right? But then you leave out actual result because actual result happens after. You see actual result is empty is because actual result is meant for, I don't know if you guys can see it. Is it small or big enough? Let's see if I can open the image in new tab. Okay, there we go. It's big enough now. So now you see the actual result is empty is because when you wrote the test cases, you know exactly what the expected result is right there. This is the expected result. Successful login should happen even once you enter your Gmail credentials. But the actual result is empty because you don't know until you execute. You don't know really if the actual result is going to be, successful login. You don't know that until you try it. So now this test case, you're going to go through the first step. You're going to go and you're going to follow these preconditions. You're going to follow these steps and you're going to then try to match your expected result with the actual. So if you're able to log in, then it is a successful login. You're going to go ahead and write it as expected or as expected. I was able to log in successfully. So, and that will be your actual result. Okay. So if you want to put a technical way, we're just matching apple to apple, right? At the time of execution, because we already have the documents. There is no need for me to like assume anything. It's already absolutely done because we wrote our test cases, guys. Okay. Like I said, in this process, no question and doubt should be happening. I'm going to explain again if I need to. I'm going to go over this even a few more times, but this is your job, right? This is going to be your bread and butter. So you better really get the solid understanding of this. Okay, test execution is done, right? After the test execution, what happens?
Defect reporting.
Okay, so you find bugs, right? So I would say find, or maybe like, okay, once you found it, log and track bugs. And the reason why we say log and track, log meaning you're basically providing all the details that is necessary in order to create the defect and bug, right? You can't simply just say this is not working, that is not working. Can you look at it? No, you create a detailed report, okay? And the report looks like this, and we're gonna actually do those ourselves. If I'm showing the picture right now, don't feel that this is the only thing. We are not even up to the syllabus yet. We didn't even start the syllabus, guys. So when we go through the syllabus, we're gonna create this ourselves, but I just wanna give you guys this expectation right now, this idea. So that way, when we're doing it, actually, you take it easy. You don't all of a sudden feel like, oh, this is too much. So bug report it could be as good as this, where you providing the bug IDs along with some details, and then you're providing environment where the bug happened. You're providing the overview. You're providing the details again right here. Okay. Bug tracking, hi. You're providing priority, severity, and I guess like this is like a very old kind of bug template, very old. We don't do this anymore. So I'm going to go into another one that may look a little bit more modern. So this one seems like more modern to me because this is coming from GitHub. So step to reproduce, like how did you even find that bug, right? Result, what is your expected result, right? So some of the things you can actually copy from test cases and paste it here, like expected result. Screenshots and recording. Screenshots or screen recording is something that you produce because you found the bug. And then you have to provide system information such as operating system, if you're using Mac or Windows, if you're using iOS device or Android, browser, device, and the time. What time zone you're working on, because sometimes bugs happens due to the time zone as well. Most importantly, you have to also provide the version of the software that you're using right now. So every software will have their version, so you got to provide, but then there is a few more pieces of information like priority and severity that is missing on this one. So you'll have to provide it based on the priority. Developers are gonna take your task and they're gonna work. Remember, your command is their basically task at that point. So and if you find a bug, they will jump on it. They will feel guilty. They will basically look at you, oh, okay, I didn't know this happened. No, okay, I'll fix it. And they'll run for it. They'll go and fix it for you. So your job is to make that process as smooth as possible and not weird and awkward. So if you find a bug, like, hey, well, how come this happened? Imagine like I'm a developer and you come to me with an approach. I don't know, nothing works. This is crazy. Why did you do this? Did you read? You know what I'm saying? Like this is the type of mentality you don't want, because in a team, everybody is, everybody has certain tasks. You want to treat him as a teammate, and like you want to ask him. So for example, Felix right here. You go to Felix. I'm like, hey Felix, I was testing and I found few discrepancies. I just want to confirm if these are real bugs, or if these are actually bugs. Can I just go over with them? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Hey, okay, so this is what's happening when I go into this part of the application. Felix goes, oh, wow, I don't know how I missed that. You know what, log that, that's a bug. Go ahead and log in. Okay, all right, let's go into the next one. And then you just do it very diplomatic way. You also can actually set up a meeting in your calendar, which will properly credit you for the day, right? Meaning like you can show that what you did for the day. Your manager will see your calendar because it's public. So now he sees that you're going out and setting up meetings and things like that. So that is the approach. So the professionalism will come over time, but I will try to give you guys some ways to be very, very professional and technical at the same time, not able to deal somebody else's, like the way that they will handle you, right? So we'll also talk about those to make sure that you don't get mishandled and how to combat scenarios where people talk to you bad. That is not tolerated, just to give you guys early tips, right? We do not tolerate that. If somebody walks on you today, then tomorrow they will do it again. But as a tester, as an engineer, your mind, your ability and all of that, we will, as time goes by, we'll talk about how to make how to actually combat instead of getting into really crashing scenarios with your coworkers if there's something at all. It's never going to happen. Everybody gets paid, trust me. In QA or engineering, everybody gets paid well, and nobody fights over overtime because nobody wants to do overtime. But also you're going to see everybody's calm because they get stable paycheck and in their account, and they just do their job, and that's it, right? Nobody's killing nobody else, compared to some of the jobs, right, where maybe you're working in like behind the counter somewhere, right, where overtime is pretty much essential for you and for your coworkers. So now there might be some frictions and things like that. There might be politics. There is really less politics in an established company in IT. So So you will probably also be thankful to that as well. Okay, so now you guys saw the bug report, right? Okay, so let's go into the next thing of the SDLC. So once you did the bug logging and tracking, it's really like almost close to definition of done. So once you did that, and I'm going to add a few more process. Again, this might not match with what's on the internet, but this is what really happens, right? So bug logging and tracking, it has its own. So remember life cycle. Remember life cycle, right? There's 3 life cycle that you have to remember. Only 3. Okay, so don't freak out and try to just grasp one at a time. Bug life cycle is also another one, right? BLC, and we'll talk about that. So we'll talk about that also. It expands to another process and stuff, and why this is even life cycle, right? Remember we talked about earlier why this was the life cycle. How come this is a life cycle? And we'll talk about that also. Number 7, you then go ahead and, so if the bug is fixed, logged and tracked and everything, then you finish your testing, and then you go ahead and move that to UAT. So UAT do that UAT testing. In that process, you will basically help them as much as possible. So they will have questions like, how did you test it? Can you show me? I don't know how to do this. Is because you are the one who tested it and they just getting the feature. UAT testers, don't misunderstand them. Don't try to say like, oh, how come you're not doing your job? No, they're doing their job. They're a product owner and they basically work more on the business side. So sometimes they'll just ask you to test and they want to see it, and then they will just close the ticket, right? They just want to accept, right? This is called acceptance testing. So they will just go ahead and accept all the changes. So for your team, behalf of your team, and they'll say, okay, everything is good now. So you want to make sure that you have some filters when you talk to them. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to talk to them in a way like, oh, okay, nah, how come you're not doing this? They will seem like they're lazy and stuff because they're not doing it. They want you to do it. But the thing is, they are busy with business stuff, right? They're the one who's writing requirements. So you just gonna be like, okay, let me explain to you, let me show you, let me whatever you need from me, and then that's it. Then this ticket is closed and you move on with the next one, right? The story is closed and you work with the next task. After the UAT testing, we have release, right? Right before the release, guys, we have to do regression testing, because regression testing is what we discussed earlier, is that it's something that will make sure that existing features and functionality is not broken and it's still working as expected. So you will do this regression testing, which is right before the release. And this regression testing includes all of the previous test cases that you created and maybe more. Maybe you'll do some ad hoc as well. So that will ensure that previous features and functionality is still working fine, okay? And that is very, very critical. Once that is done, release will take place, release happens. And once the release takes place, then what do you do in the release? How come you have to be part of the release as a QA? Is because you will do a post-release testing. And post-release testing is to make sure 2 things. One is that the feature that was just released is still working in the production, so the user is not having a hard time. And the other thing is that you do a smoke test, right? So part of the post-release, you have to do production. You basically, if you are lucky enough, or at least if the company trusts you enough, they will give you production access, meaning now you can actually log in. If you even work for Chase Bank, you can put some zeros into somebody's account if you want to, but you don't do that, obviously, right? And they just get audited and other things like that, so you'll probably be arrested. But think about this way: in production is very critical. So you make sure that every move that you make in production after logging in, after the release, is everything you really accounted for. My tips is that close everything on your computer, close literally everything, because you may get confused between production and non-production environment. So test environment and production environment, you may get confused and you may do things that you're not supposed to. And now, next thing you know, your phone is ringing. Everybody's looking for you because somebody got $5 billion in their account because of you, right? So when you're in production, just beware, right? This can actually put you in a very, very bad situation. You can lose your job right away. So that's why in production, just be careful. In production, we do smoke testing. Smoke testing is basically just go real quick, run some of the high priority test cases. That is, those test cases basically something that deals with major part of the applications to make sure that at least the major part of the application is working fine. So this is just to ensure the production environment is still fine after the release. And then we also do feature testing. Feature testing is basically whatever you just released. You want to also take a look to see after the release still working as good as the way you tested in the test environment. Okay, so that is the whole process. And now if you ask me, is there any other process left? Yes, we can add them, but there are some, I'm understanding here. For example, scenario, we didn't add scenario review as a step because that is considered that company can have the scenario review, or a team can choose not to have a scenario to review. A company can remove the scenarios altogether, but test case is something will never be removed. So here, where is the automation falls in place, guys? This is the whole testing process, and this is your bread and butter, and this is something that you should really, really know well, right? Now, I'm gonna give you guys a scenario, and I'm gonna ask you this question that you need to answer, right? So let's say I'm a manager, QA manager. I came from, my background is customer service. I was a customer service director, and then they promoted me to go into engineering, and I became a QA manager, right? That's how it is. Like, QA managers are not technical at all. Sometimes they are, right? Sometimes very, I would say rare, but QA managers usually they got hooked up maybe because they know the director or something, or maybe they have personality. They actually have people skills, and they really, really make sure that everybody feels best about themselves. And also they're a really good leader. Then they will be QA managers. Now, the question here is that if I am a QA manager, I'm non-technical because I came from a customer service background, and you are sitting on the other side of my table, and this one question will determine whether you will be hired or not. The question here is that you are a testing expert, you are a test engineer. What will you do if I give an assignment from the very beginning to the end to finish that test or finish that task? Explain to me details. And that's the only question I gave you, right? Who wants to take that? Who wants to try at least? The pointers are in front of you right now if you're looking at my screen. Okay, if you're still looking at my screen. So now all you have to do is start from the beginning and explain and explain and explain until you finish. Who wants to take that? This is an opportunity for you to kind of like shine today, at least today's class. All right, you got 5 more seconds and then I'll move on.
Can I
3,
try?
2, go ahead.
Yeah, first I will gather the requirements.
You will gather the requirements? Are you a VA or product owner?
No, I will gather the requirement from BA.
Why there is a need for gathering? And gathering has a very specific meaning, right? That means you create, right? You basically, it's not just, they're supposed to deliver the requirement to you when the time of assignment, right? Assignment is already assigned, therefore you already have it.
Okay, so sorry for that. Like the requirements are there. Now I'm going to do the test planning.
Okay.
And I will do the test scenarios and how I'm going to execute my test or something like that. Then I will do the test.
I'll pause you. I'll stop you for a second. We never talk like something like this and stuff like that or anything, because if you're truly an expert, word should come out, right? And that's why, like, one of the way that we try to help after the class is that to give you everything in writing. So that way, when you're facing these questions, you have words, not, like these few substitute words that will make you feel like non-technical. Now, here's the here is the tips that I'll give you, right? The tip here is that, yes, you have the pointers in front of you. You don't have to like, just read it, right? You don't have to just say, okay, I will do study, I'll first study the requirement, then I will do the test planning. Yes, if you do that from the very beginning to the end, you'll still make sense. It will still be an acceptable answer and it will still be a good answer. But we're not there for a good answer. We're trying to do an excellent answer. We're trying to basically tell the manager that we are the number one. I am the number one and I should be on your list when the time comes for him to make a decision. So if you want to do that, you want to explain a little bit what can happen during the requirement study. You got the requirement, you're studying the requirement, and then you found some sort of issues. You found discrepancies, you found inconsistencies or ambiguity. What happens then? Like, it's never going to be going like it's a perfect world, right? There are always going to be some sort of issues. So now you could reach out to the BA, you reach out to the product owner, you consult with them, you guys discuss, you guys have a meeting, and then the requirement is squared away. The requirement is actually now refined to a point where the requirement is now ready for you to start working, which is the next thing is test planning. In the test planning, you will create the document if it's not already present, but chances are a test plan is just a one single document for the whole entire team, for the whole entire project. So as long as the project didn't change, it should be a single document. So you're going to say, I will update the test plan if there is a need, but I will look at the test plan if it's already existing. Otherwise, I'll have to create one. And I will think about what is in scope, out of scope, exit criteria, entry criteria, definition of done, definition of ready, who will do the task, and also risk assumptions that I need to make. After that, I will start writing my test scenario. Test scenario is something that I will really think about like an end user because they don't have any limit. So I'll think about all possible scenarios in order for me to list. I will think about combination of scenarios, and I'll also think like an engineer at the time of writing these scenarios. The next thing, I'll write test cases. Test cases, I'm going to basically write in a way that anybody can execute, meaning it has enough details for them to just go ahead and execute the test. I will then do execution of the test, and if I find any bug, I'll log and track. If the bug is fixed, then I will retest it, and then I will close my bug and then close the story or close the task. And then I will start working with UAT testers to make sure they have enough information on their side to do their part of the testing. After that, when we're ready for release, I will do regression test to make sure that these new features or new added functionality is not breaking the existing features and functionality. Once that is done, I will be participating in the release to make sure that everything goes as smooth. Once the release took place, I will do post-release testing, which includes smoke and feature testing. In smoke, I will make sure that major part of the applications are still functioning well as expected. And then also the new feature is also working in production after deployment. Now, this is the standard process for maybe one company. They just keep in mind 1 or 2 processes can be changed or even removed. I just gave you everything, okay? So can you say everything? Yes, you can, right? But can you remove one thing? Yes, you can. Now, if they said, oh, but you didn't talk about test scenario, for example, in the interview, you can say, I'm so sorry, but in my team, we actually just write test scenario after doing the test planning. And yeah, I did recommend my team to do to write test scenario, which is helpful to kind of gather all of the thoughts in one place before writing the test cases, but we actually just go right to the test cases right now. All right, if you misspoke or something. So just keep in mind it's expendable. Keep in mind engineers, they can choose, they're not like, oh, like workers like working in accounting where you have to follow this IRS process, otherwise, they don't get that refund or whatever's the case. It's not written in stone. The process can be expanded, changed, and improved by QA engineers. Everybody's an engineer in the team, as well as your manager. So just keep that in mind, guys. Keep that in mind. Okay. So I'm sure you'll get another perspective soon from Shantabhai. So, just be open-minded when he speaks from his side. It's always going to be different for different teams. And that's one of the reasons why you get a couple months in the very beginning who like basically when after joining, you get training after join. everybody talks soft and kind of try to help you is because they know that everything is different. The product is different, the process is different, the team is different, the company is different, domain is different. So it doesn't matter you have 5 years of experience. It doesn't matter you have 6, 7, 8 years of experience. You'll still need that initial training. You'll still need your team members to sit down with you and help you throughout the whole process of testing. And that's the way you're going to be able to help them remove some of the load from their shoulder and be able to do testing yourself. With that said, guys, I don't want to give you guys a lot of stuff, but the homework is going to be a little bit more in details and intense, because these 3 different life cycles that we're going to talk about, and bug life cycle I'll explain maybe the next class, but I'm going to ask questions on this too. So this might be your initial responsibility as well to do some research how the bug lifecycle works. There is a 5-minute video on YouTube also if you feel like you want to listen rather than read, but there is diagrams just like what we looked for SDLC and SDLC. With that said, I may have more question around SDLC and STLC, and then bug lifecycle we may cover it on the next class. I will again re-emphasize is, don't take any offense to this, guys. This is coming because I want to make sure that everybody's successful at the end, right? If something happens to you personally at home, maybe you're busy and everything, and you're out there working, your boss will empathize with you, say, oh, I'm sorry that happened, but you didn't do the work, for example, right? Sooner or later, it will get to them, right? So likewise going to be here. Yes, we are human. We will try to understand what's happening with your life, but at the end of the day, you're delaying the whole process. At the end of the day, you're telling us that you're not serious. And at the end of the day, you're telling us that you're not qualified to be in a bootcamp like this. And it's not even a full-fledged bootcamp. Full-fledged bootcamp means is that you go every day for 8 hours and you come out from that and you go home and you have another 6 hours of homework, right? You know, this is the type of environment, like even my own brother, he went through actually, he's a solution architect now, but he, on his sophomore year in college, he's like, oh, I want to stop for 6 months. I want to stop college for 6 months so I can go to this coding bootcamp. You know how much it cost? And here I'm teaching you guys, right? And it costed him $25,000, right? And he wants to go because he really want to go. And I said, okay. And you guys can look up online, right? It's General Assembly. There is another called App Academy, and there's another called Lambda School. Lambda School, I think, free, but they have requirement. You can't just join like that. You have to do, you have to pass the interview. Now, and I said, okay, sure, go for it, because anything related technical stuff that he's learning, he's postponing his, you know, college for 6 months for this. 6 months later, you know, he can resume the college and now he will have more technical knowledge and stuff like that. So I said, okay, no problem. I could have easily said, okay, no, I'll teach you this stuff. It's fine. Why you want to spend 25K? And then he would literally go to, you know, the city. It's in New York City. You guys can look up. It's not a bullshit. And he would spend until like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. over there writing code, come home, and now he has homework. And now he's losing his mind for another 6 months. Oh, sorry, 6 hours, right? 7 hours. And he's trying to finish for the next day. That is called proper bootcamp. We don't have to be in that scenario because we're in testing. But I just wanted to mention this so that way you guys can have a little bit of appreciation that we're very laid back compared to what I just described. But most importantly, where he is now today also speaks for itself. As soon as he graduates, I mean, he already had a technical job before graduation, right? So he already was making over 100 on his first job, right? Being a solution architect, right? And then he expanded on that same career. He never had to move from that company. So now he's like close to 2. he's close to 200,000, and soon he's gonna probably bypass me. Is because why? Because like he's working for Amazon, number one. Number two is that he's more onto literally going into company to company where Amazon sells product to them in terms of like software product, right? Cloud and things like that. He goes and he sets those up for those big companies. So he's the main person they will call and say, hey, I can't, the engineers will call him and say, okay, this is what I need. And he'll go and facilitate that kind of needs. So this would not happen if I told him like, no, let's not even pay that 25 Gs. Let me try to help you. No, whatever, like I said, if you have to put your mind to it, money is not the question here. Money can come and go. You can be getting a ticket tomorrow and losing $600, $700, $800 easily, or you can get 2 tickets every month and now losing that much money regardless. So why not to fuel your own brain and knowledge? And that shouldn't be the problem for you to continue to do this class. And the reason why I even brought up is because the next class is paid only. If you haven't signed up, and I think Motion is here right now. So if you haven't signed up, we're probably going to be, this is where we're going to separate ourselves. 2 classes we did. Hopefully you enjoyed and we enjoyed your company. If you like to sign up, Motion is here today. Today he's free to take all the calls to make sure that everybody is properly given access for the next class. And yeah, we're basically, next class is going to be paid only and members only. So you might end up seeing another group being created where it says members only. That shows that confirmation from you that you will join the class and you already made the payment, right? I have nothing to do with, any sort of payment situation as Motion and Motion alone, and he is going to drop regardless. If the payment is not there, he will not include you in the class. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Other than that, the next class homework is 100%. We are keeping track of your homework. You can see you got an email with your score. It's very easy for us to create a matrix out of your homework. We can create analytics. We can even show like how many you're missing. We don't even have to think hard. It's already done through Google, right? So like I said, 3 homework missed without explanation, 3 class missed without explanation. You're gonna basically end the term with us, and that's the way it's gonna be. Just keep that in mind. But like I said, if you need to talk to me separately, you can private message me and I'll find some time. Again, don't take offense to this, guys. Anger or any kind of offense, it's not personal. We're not cornering just one person to say, okay, you do this or you do that, right? We're not doing that. We're not, trying to hurt anybody, but everybody has their own process. Every company has their own, guidelines, and our guidelines, we had to make sure that you guys know. So the homework will be sent out after this class. We're going to send you this recording, but most importantly, just keep in mind the next class, you will not get the link if you haven't registered the list.
We need to register if we already registered beforehand with the other batches.
No. If you already are from the other batch, just sign up and that's it. This is just for the tracking of homework because we still want to make sure that you're doing the right homeworks. But other than that, you're fine, right? Because you already paid, right? So you're fine. But if there's any missing payment, he'll probably give you some time to cover those. But if you're from previous batches, all you have to do is just make sure that you're on that list. That's it. Yeah, everybody has probably the sign up document, like the Google form. Just put your name in there. It's going to take you a few minutes and that's it. And then if you're from previous batch, we're not going to even call you and ask you like, hey, do you want to register? Do you want to sign up? Do you want to pay? We're not going to do that because we already know you're from the previous batch. But if they do happen, because again, there are some disconnect, if Motion reach out, just let them know you're from previous batch. All right, guys, with that said, enjoy your Saturday. Hopefully I see you guys on the next class. If not, best of luck with your career. There are other schools as well. Always explore and try to see, what fits your need. But most importantly, you should always try something, right? Without already thinking negative. this might be something that will work out. If it doesn't, then you will move on and you will move on to another school, and maybe you will now learn better because you already got some knowledge from here. But either way, knowledge will not go to waste. Okay, just keep in mind. With that said, I'll end the class today and I will see you guys on Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, man.
You're welcome.